Who, in your opinion, is the most overrated band, singer or musician? Here is a formula for German pop music: write about the passing of time against the concept of everyday life. This can be anything from a major break from the Alltag all the way to a full-on return to it. Love can be your gateway to this topic, as a breakup can mean the end of normal everyday life. Or you can write about memories with your friends and how everything has changed except their feelings for each other. Everything revolves around time. Lol. The whole thread is kids being tribal and contrarian. It's easy to look back on bands like Floyd and the Beatles and dismiss them as boring or overrated, but realize that Motley track recording didn't really exist before Sgt. Pepper's. The Beatles fundamentally changed pop music at a conceptual level. Floyd's crazy live shows were groundbreaking at the time. Nobody before was really doing anything like it. Anyone who thinks that Michael Jackson didn't write great pop music is a moron. You don't have to like it for it to be great. I saw him open for Beyoncé and Jay-Z. He set his DJ booth up in the corner on this huge stage that took up 80% of a stadium floor. But there he is in the corner like a bad child, waving his arms around, playing other people's songs. Oh, and I'm not making fun of his weight, but he rode a mobility scooter on the stage, then halfway through rode the mobility scooter around the stage, then rode it off into the distance. This performance was followed by Beyoncé running up and down the stadium floor while suspended 50 in the air, while wearing heels, while doing 10+ outfit changes. He was an absolute disgrace of an opener for that woman's amazing professionalism. I think the main point to all the controversial replies here, the Beatles, Queen, Eminem, Nirvana, is time. In their time, each of those now overrated artists were one of the greats because they were pioneers. They were doing new things that had never been heard or done. When you approach the music from today's perspective, it isn't all that exciting as it was back then, because we've had dozens of artists doing the same and every variation on it since. We've even had new greats doing new things, building from those earlier pioneers, which further dumbs down their original impact. Example, Raya Heap and Deep Purple were the first heavy metal bands. In today's standards you'd be hard-pressed to call it metal or even hard rock, but in the 70s these guys were the heaviest music around. A verbal argument ensued and Chris Brown pulled the vehicle over on an unknown street, reached over Robin F. with his right hand, opened the car door and attempted to force her out. Brown was unable to force Robin F. out of the vehicle because she was wearing a seat belt. When he could not force her to exit, he took his right hand and shoved her head against the passenger window of the vehicle, causing an approximate 1-inch raised circular contusion. Robin F. turned to face Brown and he punched her in the left eye with his right hand. He then drove away in the vehicle and continued to punch her in the face with his right hand while steering the vehicle with his left hand. The assault caused Robin F.'s mouth to fill with blood and blood to splatter all over her clothing and the interior of the vehicle. Brown looked at Robin F. and stated, "I'm going to beat the shit out of you when we get home. You wait and see." The detective said Robin F. then used her cell phone to call her personal assistant Jennifer Rosales, who did not answer. Robin F. pretended to talk to her and stated, "I'm on my way home. Make sure the police are there when I get there." After Robin F. faked the call, Brown looked at her and stated, "You just did the stupidest thing ever. Now I'm really going to kill you." Brown resumed punching Robin F. and she interlocked her fingers behind her head and brought her elbows forward to protect her face. She then bent over at the waist, placing her elbows and face near her lap in an attempt to protect her face and head from the barrage of punches being levied upon her by Brown. Brown continued to punch Robin F. on her left arm and hand, causing her to suffer a contusion on her left triceps. Sick. That was approximately 2 inches in diameter and numerous contusions on her left hand. Robin F. then attempted to send a text message to her other personal assistant, Melissa Ford. Brown snatched the cellular telephone out of her hand and threw it out of the window onto an unknown street. Brown continued driving and Robin F. observed his cellular telephone sitting in his lap. She picked up the cellular telephone with her left hand, and before she could make a call he placed her in a headlock with his right hand and continued to drive the vehicle with his left hand. Brown pulled Robin F. close to him and bit her on her left ear. She was able to feel the vehicle swerving from right to left as Brown sped away. He stopped the vehicle in front of 333 North June Street and Robin F. turned off the car, removed the key from the ignition and sat on it. Brown did not know what she did with the key and began punching her in the face and arms. He then placed her in a headlock, positioning the front of her throat between his bicep and forearm. Brown began applying pressure to Robin F.'s left and right carotid arteries, causing her to be unable to breathe, and she began to lose consciousness. She reached up with her left hand and began attempting to gouge his eyes in an attempt to free herself. Brown bit her left ring and middle fingers and then released her. While Brown continued to punch her, she turned around and placed her back against the passenger door. She brought her knees to her chest, placed her feet against Brown's body and began pushing him away. Brown continued to punch her on the legs and feet, causing several contusions. Robin F. began screaming for help and Brown exited the vehicle and walked away. A resident in the neighborhood heard Robin F.'s plea for help and called 911, causing a police response. An investigation was conducted and Robin F. was issued a domestic violence emergency protective order. He was in the Vina del Mar Music Festival. He didn't know that it was a very known festival in South America and he behaved like an asshole. He demanded to festival staff to look away when he was in the backstage, and that they shouldn't look him in the eyes. Be aware that is a televised show, so there are a lot of journalists that are in the backstage and they suppose that he didn't know that and behaved like shit and said shit things when he headed back to his backstage room after a not very good show. The journalists from a lot of South American TV channels were there too, so everybody in Chile knew that he behaved like shit at the exact moment. Bear in mind that Morrissey and Luis Miguel have played in that festival years ago, and even them behaved better, haha. I'm assuming you don't live in Australia, and in that case you've not had the worst of it. I live in the city she lives in. The moment she got any international success, every radio station was playing her non-stop and talking about how talented she was. Interviews everywhere. Aussies are so starved for musical success outside of our own country that even just charting on Billboard will make you the talk of the country for a month. Dance Monkey was in the top 10 for 70 weeks, which is longer than 98% of chart runs in total. It's still in the top 50 after 2.5 years. It was in the top 5 for radio airplay for 80+ weeks. Genuinely torturous to hear one song you don't like over and over again for 2.5 years. And still hear radio presenters hyping the singer up. I don't hate her or anything, but God, it's annoying. Billie Eilish. She's definitely talented, but she is a product of excellent branding and marketing. I have no problem with that, but she's definitely not some musical genius like her young fans make her out to be. Her parents are both actors and screenwriters. Her brother is her main producer/songwriter/lyricist and had a band with management and was on Glee. She's a perfect example of it's all about who you know. Not to take anything away from her talents, because she definitely is talented. I just see her as the frontman of a group working behind the scenes producing all of the real talent. I was quite disappointed when I found out some time ago that she wasn't some ordinary upbringing kid who made music in her bedroom and went viral purely because of the whims of the internet, lol. That was the narrative for quite a while, especially from her fans. She just made music in her room and got famous and she's a genius. And like, it's just that her brother does a bit of the background work sometimes is all. Yeah, the internet did make her famous, but that's because everyone else in her life knew how getting her to go viral works. Probably. People do like their rags to riches, middle class to riches stories, even if they have to make it up. He has recorded literally hundreds of original songs. They are not all the same. You've heard his 2 big hits. You've got a right to your own preferences, of course, but try listening to a couple of dozen of his less-known songs, then reconsider. He has a gimmick: Southern Seas, Perpetual Vacation, Laid Back, Sailing, Flying, a little smuggling, steel drums. That gets a little old. But he's one of the great storytelling songwriters. His arrangements are tight and he hires good instrumentalists and backup vocalists. May be worth another listen. As an avid metalhead mom with twin toddlers, I fucking love the Wiggles. I mean, they could be into Peppa Pig with the incessant snorting every 10 seconds, or they could be into any other annoying YouTuber, but their favorite is the Wiggles, and me and their dad are well on the hype train for them. I was bored wondering what Waltzing Matilda was on about when they covered it. It's about a guy committing fucking suicide to avoid imprisonment. Meteorology is a fucking banger too. I don't care what anyone says. My kids absolutely love anything musical instrument related because of the Wiggles, and that's great for me because I own 4 different instruments. I remember when my brother grew up on Thomas the Wank Engine and he just looked at my guitars like they were boring. The Wiggles may be annoying on the surface, but I will die on the hill that there is no better influence on TV if you're letting your toddlers have screen time. U2 today is very easy to criticize because their latest albums are way below their older stuff in terms of honesty and quality. The iPhone album was kind of decent, but it still lacked a certain stylistic bravery and creativity their pre-2000 albums had. U2 was the biggest in the 80s, from what I read. The Edge's guitar was the most important thing there. It was new. It wasn't Robert Smith. It wasn't anybody else. It was unique, especially around the Joshua Tree, which is considered to be their best work. However, when that got out of hand and they got big, they made a U-turn, and almost single-handedly invented the British alternative of 90s. Although they have no proper connections to Britpop, Achtung Baby is one of the most monumental pieces of music from that decade that is overlooked because of, arguably, bigger records such as Nevermind, Morning Glory, etc. Back then, U2 was fresh. When Bono started going around pretending to be the new messiah with politics and all that, they became like a corporate entity. They can still get a great song out, but nowadays they have to reach far up their own asses in order to reach their past selves. Sorry, but I disagree. Joshua Tree is a masterpiece, but they kept the same level of grandiosity during the 90s and through their last greatest album, All That You Can't Leave Behind. Bono was one of the most public personalities of the 90s. He was like an artistic consciousness of the 90s world events, long before the internet trained, and the band made extraordinary work putting on the table events like the Bosnian War, or Fair Trade, and advocated for good causes, which can be polemic and ethically questionable. Achtung Baby and Pop are super experimental. At iClub has some songs that still sound super actual. They seem to fade away during the 2010s, but I think that they just got tired. Lol. I don't think they're overrated at all. That's so funny because I had the exact opposite experience. I hated Post Malone's music and thought he was so overhyped. But then, I Fall Apart was playing on the radio one day while I happened to be going through a breakup. I had heard it before and always skipped it, but I guess I decided to give it a chance that day. And boy did I fall apart. I also realized there was something about the song that reminded me of the hip-hop my sister and cousin listened to back in the 90s. I don't know what exactly, but it took me back to sitting on my cousin's bunk bed trying to hang out with the older kids. I saw him live not long after that, and there was something really emotionally satisfying about being among thousands of other people who were belting out that song in unison. As the Grinch said, one man's junk is another man's potpourri. Post-Black album Metallica still gave us some gems. Load and Reload should have been one record. Bleeding Me, Outlaw Doran, Fixer, Fuel, Memory Remains, UN2 are great. Street Anger, although heavily criticized, and rightly so, has aged better than expected. People loved it when they played songs off of Street Anger on their last tour. As far as Death Magnetic is concerned, and this may be an unpopular opinion, but I loved DM. Production was but the actual songs were thrashy. Opening 2 songs, All Nightmare Long, My Apocalypse, with some good ballads in there. UN3, Day That Never Comes. As for Hardwired, The first half was good, but the second half seems to be filler all the way through until Spit Out the Bone closes the record on a high. So all in all, not a bad catalog, huh? Any other band would have received plaudits from putting out such material, but because Metallica's core fanbase couldn't handle them diverging from their thrash roots, they took heat for it. P.S. They also did S&M, which is arguably my favorite thing they've done. I'm fucking tired of being shamed for disliking Olivia Rodrigo's music. S has only 18. Sorry, but age isn't the safety cushion for uncreative songs. Also, I'm tired of hearing about how her lyrics are so meaningful. Literally in every song I have heard. I haven't listened to the full album. The basic gist of the lyrics is my boyfriend broke up with me and I'm jelly of his new girlfriend. I'll give Good For You a pass, I guess, because it's short and sweet and doesn't drag on. People are also praising Traitor despite it being a blatant rip-off of Heather by Conan Gray. Sorry for the rant. I'm not saying she's a bad person or that her music is bad, but putting it up on a pedestal is too much. Exactly. So I was one of those people that didn't understand BTS. I heard Butter and it sounded like a basic, okay boy band song, just kind of vapid, not really even that catchy. So I started researching them to figure out why the hell they have their cult following, so baffling at first lol. And I realized that they actually are incredibly talented because of exactly what you wrote. Their performances where they sing and dance are amazing. They do have great voices, but unlike other K-pop stars, they have been successful in fighting to get some control over their music, and their international marketing facilitated that. Their BTS ARMY fans have also helped and are weirdly organized. The fans helped get their merchandise in US stores, for example. I guess the appeal is that despite being so manufactured initially, they were able to be authentic and connect with their fans. BTS would go out of their way to interact with their fans personally and had endearing personalities, I guess. They were able to write some of their own lyrics on certain songs so fans felt they were genuine. Their early music is much better than their singles IMO. I don't think they're overrated. They actually have talent thanks to their absurd work ethic and the brutal industry that works them past their limit. That, combined with their international influence, makes it hard to argue they don't deserve their acclaim. For whatever reason, when people nowadays think of Jay-Z, they think of his more modern work. Jay-Z was at his peak in the 1996 to 2003 period. That is where all of his best hits and albums came out. He was basically at the top of the rap game in that era. I kid you not. There was a time in the early 2000s where people would make arguments that Jay-Z was the greatest rapper of all time up to that point, but he maintained a solid amount of fame afterwards, and so most youth only remember his hits after 2003, which weren't that great. His classic work has mostly been forgotten. I honestly think he would be better remembered as a legendary rapper if he stopped making music after the Black Album. It's like if the Beatles continued to make cheap hits into the 70s and 80s, and people only remembered them for that, and not their 1960s work, which was their best. Band. Sublime. Everyone blows a load over them and all I hear is the same 5 songs out of what is supposed to be one of the greatest bands of all time. To me, Bradley Nowell is just the Jesus Christ to all of the burnouts out there. Singer, Billie Eilish for sure. Her voice isn't bad by any means, but it takes 5 minutes of reading about her to find out she is entirely manufactured by her already rich family. Musician, Marshmello. I think the idea of the persona was interesting, and his music started out with a specific character to it, but it's just been a corporate production for years and there is no possible way on earth that one person is doing all the things, appearing in all the things that he is supposedly doing. After a long day of work, Kanye West goes to his Kanye nest to take his Kanye rest. He wakes up feeling his Kanye best. Then he'll get Kanye dressed on his Kanye vest to go on a Kanye quest. He goes to church and becomes Kanye blessed. Then to a hotel room to be a Kanye guest. Then to school to take his Kanye test. He forgot to brush his teeth. Did he run out of Kanye crest? His neighbor stole it. What a Kanye best. He then puts on some Axe for some Kanye zest and goes to the bar puffing out his Kanye chest. Gets drunk into a Kanye mess and goes home to the Kanye West part of town. He realized his life was a wreck. and was feeling a little Kanye depressed. "My life sucks," Kanye digressed. He decided to get some Italian tea. He flew to Kanye Trieste. He got some pasta and started to Kanye digest. "You should get some Kanye rest," his wife Kanye pressed. Instead he went to a Kanye fest. He then realized he needed to go to Dallas for his competition, so he went to the airport and hopped on Kanye Southwest, got some Kanye rest, and the next morning was feeling ready for his Kanye contest. Or at least he Kanye guessed. On the day of the competition he was feeling a little Kanye stressed. But in the end the judges were Kanye impressed. For his performance he was awarded with the Kanye chest, clearly identified with the Kanye crest. There ends the story of Kanye West.